Today on Between the Lines, a master filmmaker, the Academy Award-winning William Friedkin. Welcome, I'm Barry Kibrick. William has made some of the world's most iconic films, from The Exorcist, whose images still reside deeply in the hearts and minds of millions, to his Academy Award-winning The Friedkin Connection. His films have left indelible impressions on moviegoers worldwide. Now with his book, The Friedkin Connection, this maverick filmmaker shares his remarkable journey that has transformed the cinematic experience.
I'm a writer today because I was a reader when I was 11 years old, and it was...
You do not need to prove your state of happiness to anybody.
Most of these speeches were as much as a month in preparation.
Characters, the heroes in this book, are seekers of truth in a story that involves a lot of corruption.
I don't get a chance to really talk about what's real, and it's the purpose for me.
William Friedkin, this is a pleasure and honor to have you here on Between the Lines.
It's good to be here, Barry. Good to talk to you.
You know, I'm going to begin with the fact of a story you tell, and it's the first time you go to the movies. And you are literally frightened, but there's a love that you feel for film, for cinema, somewhere deep inside that never left you.
Barry, the first time I saw a film, I was very young. It was somewhere between the ages of 6 and 9, I'm not sure. But it was the first film I'd seen. My mother took me to a neighborhood theater, and I had no idea what to expect. There was no television then, you know, just radio. And I had never seen a film before this particular experience. And I was sitting in a large theater, and all of a sudden the lights went down very slowly, which sort of made me a little uncomfortable. And then I heard the sound of what turned out to be the curtains parting, and then all of a sudden a very bright light came on the screen and sound, and I screamed. I was terrified. I didn't know what the hell to expect. And I had to be removed from the theater right after the opening credits, or before the opening credits were done. And certainly at that point, I didn't have a great love for cinema. But it's in the book because I thought it was relevant to the fact that, you know, a few of my films had the same effect on people in terms of a visceral response. But mine was totally visceral, having nothing whatever to do with the story that may or may not have been on the screen. I never saw it, but having to do with the experience itself.
Bill, in the book, I rarely take other people's quotes, but you quote two people, and I want to get your take on it because they must have meant something deep to you. The first one is by Elia Kazan, and it is, "Arrogance, however disguised, is the essence of every artist."
Yes, I think he's right. He wrote what I believe to be the most definitive autobiography of anyone who ever worked in film. His book, which is called A Life, which is close to 1,000 pages long, is the most confessional, the most honest, the most revelatory autobiography of anyone in the arts that I've ever read. He is very hard on himself. He takes little credit for his successes, and he takes all the blame for his failures. And his lack of knowledge when he first got into film as a director. He says he didn't know what the hell he was doing, but you still have to make it appear as though you do. When you're the guy on the set, in charge of the set, you may not know, and I've often been in that situation, may not know what the hell you're doing. But if you show that to the crew or the actors, you're dead. So arrogance is something that is very helpful to a director. You can call it arrogance. You could call it, a number of things. You could call it a show of self-confidence. But I knew Elia Kazan, and I was the president of the Directors Guild in New York, and he was on my board around the time he was writing his book. And as a human being, just as a guy to get to know, he was anything but arrogant. But what he's referring to is the aura that a director has to project on the set.
You also have to be very persistent. And the other quote that I'm going to use that you wrote that is from Samuel Beckett, and it is, "No matter, try again, fail better."
That's a quote from Beckett that I think is particularly welcoming. You know you're going to fail. No matter what it is you attempt, if you have a long enough career, you're going to have ups and downs and failures. And you've got to learn to absorb those and live with them and recognize them. And next time, try to fail better. You know, I think it's very well put, so I quoted Beckett. I wish I had said that, but I repeated it, quoted it from Beckett.
Well, his words are out now. One of the things that you do write about throughout the book is this dynamic that you seem to always want in every film, and I know that at least in 3 of them that I saw, and one in particular, you achieved it so intensely, and that is that visceral effect. When you go to the theater, it's more than just an experience of viewing something. It is an experience of feeling it at a level that almost makes it seem it's endemic to your own feeling. And I'll never forget leaving The Exorcist with my brother, sitting in the car, holding that steering wheel, and my brother, 6'4", 320-pound wrestler, turns to me, frightened as a ghost, and I'm like, and he looks and he says, "You don't really think that could happen, do you?" And I'm going, "I don't think so, but that's what you do." I mean, that's a visceral feel. That's different than leaving a movie laughing, enjoying it, analyzing it. It hits you in the chakras.
Well, first of all, The Exorcist was very strongly based on an actual case that took place in 1949 in Silver Spring, Maryland. It was a 14-year-old boy, not a girl, and the young man, or he's an older man now, is still alive and has no recollection of what happened to him when he was 14. But I believe, to go directly toward your comment, that there's only 3 reasons that people go to see a film, and that's to have an emotional response, to laugh or cry or be frightened. I don't believe that people really pay good money to see a film and come out of it saying, "Well, that was interesting," or "Wow, I didn't realize that." No, they go for an emotional response. I know I do. I want to have some connection to the characters on the screen and the story. I want it to be able to relate to my own life. And I'm not a very good director unless I can find a way that the stories I'm telling on film reflect my own, whether it be my own experiences or fears or attitudes. And often, when I can find that, I can make a film that will reach other people, but only if the film is done simply and with clarity. Those are the 2 most important qualities a filmmaker needs to tell a story on film: clarity and simplicity. And if you do that, then your primary objective, once you're going to do it that way, is to involve the audience emotionally. That's what you're there for as a storyteller.
You also involve the crew emotionally. You feel very important that it is extremely important on how, after you obviously select the correct actor, you especially know that your director of photography is important, and especially when you're starting out, you have to rely on so many people. The relationship that you maintain with the crew seems like the first relationship before you can have that relationship with the audience.
Well, yes, it is a collaborative world. I mean, a painter, an artist, stands in front of a blank canvas on an easel, and what he puts on that canvas comes solely from within him and from his inner life and from his mind and his imagination through his hand to a brush to the canvas. It's singular. But a filmmaking is the most collaborative of art forms. There are many people that contribute. They all contribute. And so what the director has to do, first of all, is make sure everyone's on the same page. Everyone's making the same film. Whereas you're dependent on the cinematographer to a great extent. If I say, I want the shot from over there, not from over there, it's going to be from over there, you know. But he has to understand and realize why, and then make his own creative contributions. Because a film is made up of the creative contributions of many people, even though one intelligence ignites it.
You have a chapter in your book, and the heading of the chapter is The Mystery of Faith. And right before that, you talk about this: the zeitgeist plays a major role in what I choose to call the grace of God. So there is almost a counterbalance to what I said before about that instinct, and then something that's, because that's so internal, and something that almost seems external or transcendent from oneself plays a major role.
There's no doubt about that. And I made The Exorcist with that in mind. I never set out to make a horror film. I realize that most people who saw the film and who are aware of it today, it's now in its 40th year and it's still playing, and it's coming out again this year in new media. Most of those people consider it a horror film. They consider it one of the best ever made. I never thought of it as a horror film. And that's why I called the chapter The Mystery of Faith. That's what I was examining with that film. The power and mystery of faith that was able to save the life of a very sick girl.
The sick girl is played by Linda Blair. And the thing that you write afterwards is this: the best films I made are the ones where you cannot see the acting.
Yes, I certainly go along with that. Or the directing. One of the first things I think I mentioned to you was my belief in clarity and simplicity. And that's the approach I try to take. Now, when I started, I wasn't that aware of the importance of those two qualities. So a lot of my films were, you could call them resume films, you know, where the director was very much present. Look at this angle. Look at this innovative camera movement. Look at this extraordinary piece of editing, montage. For many years now, I no longer think about that. That is sort of automatic. What I'm concerned about is that I present the best vision of the story and the characters that I know and that I can to the audience.
One of the ways you achieve it, according to the book, is what is most important to me is spontaneity, not perfection.
Absolutely.
I know that was specifically with actors, but I have a feeling that also transcends through all of your filmmaking.
Yes, a lot of happy accidents occur on the set, especially when you're on location, and you have to be open to them and to know if they're going to fit in or not. But yes, I believe in spontaneity. You and I are talking now. We haven't rehearsed this conversation. I have no idea what you're going to ask me, but I'm talking to you and listening to you. And that's the secret of great acting. And it's the only secret, is to listen to the other person as though you're hearing the words for the first time and speaking to the other person, not going off and sort of generalizing or searching for a response, but literally what scenes in films have a lot to do with is conversations between two or more people. And it's a great gift to see an actor be able to do that and not see the seams.
I like the way you're moving your hands, like a puppet even, not see the strings. Am I correct? Yeah.
So I no longer rehearse a scene. I do all of my work before I get to the set. I don't rehearse scenes anymore and I usually do them in one take. I'll only do a second take if a light falls down into the shot or the camera tips over or something like that. When I started out, like every other guy who didn't know what he was doing, I would do 15 or 16 takes, hoping for a miracle somewhere around take 12 or so. And I found when I got in the cutting room that the best performance of the moment, of the shot, was the first printed take, when the actors were allowed to be the most spontaneous. And where we didn't say, now wait a minute, on that word where you say this or that, why don't you emphasize that a little more? Or maybe you should turn and look over there. I don't do any of this crap. What I'm looking for is an honesty in performance. And so that begins with the casting. If the casting isn't spot on, you have no way of achieving what I just said. And with actors, the director has to determine the course of a performance before you ever get to the set. And you do that by getting to know the actor very well and revealing yourself. Because all the actors really want from a director is a psychological underpinning for their characters and a staging that works, where they feel comfortable in the staging. And very often, you'll let them contribute to the staging. Well, maybe if I didn't sit here, but I stood up, or maybe I turned my back, and you say, yeah, that'll work, let's do that. So you encourage creativity, but it's all done before. The director is kind of an amateur psychiatrist. I'll find out the things that have most caused an actor in their lives, in their own lives, to love or to hate or to be frightened or to laugh at something. And I'll be able to push those buttons later in the scene. And I will talk to them, the actors, about those moments that they've shared with me that allow them to reach those emotions.
Well, a moment that you share with us that reached a deep emotion for you is fear. You say that fear is a motivator. My own overriding fear was failure. My successes were born of my failures. My failures line up before me each day like soldiers at attention, while my successes play hide and seek like fireflies.
That's not bad. Did I write that?
You wrote that.
Wow.
I thought that was pretty good.
That's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
Let me think about it and see if I still believe that.
Go ahead.
No, I think it's accurate. We all live with fear. Some of the most successful people I've ever met are while they have a certain arrogance about what they do, they're basically in a social situation often shy, sometimes vulnerable, but your failures leave a much stronger footprint on your psyche than your successes. Because we have no control over whether a film that we make is going to be a success or failure. It's not and I can tell you some of the most successful filmmakers around today that I know, they are terrified when a film of theirs opens. Why are they terrified? Because they think it's going to fail. Even though they've had many successes in the past, they've also tasted failure, and it's no fun.
Another thing, I have a feeling you're going to go, did I write that too? Because it was one that I triple-starred just for the way it was written. And it's happened after you had a heart attack, and you wrote these words. I'm sorry, I don't know if you wrote these words immediately after you had the heart attack.
No,
or
I didn't
just
write
in
nothing
the book.
after I had a heart
But
attack.
this is how you remember it. The coils of depression that imprisoned me slowly unwound, like the caterpillar that encloses the butterfly.
Yeah, I was very depressed. I've had 2 heart attacks. I have a pacemaker and a defibrillator. And when something like that happens to you, you realize that we're all in God's hands. Or it can be put another way. Whereas I talk about the mystery of faith, there is also the mystery of fate. We have nothing whatever to say about how we're born or how we're going to die. And very often in our lives, if we're granted a long life, many things happen to us accidentally. The road not taken or the road taken. And you'll meet somebody, as in that great song lyric from South Pacific, some enchanted evening, you may meet a stranger. You may see a stranger across a crowded room. And it changes your life.
By the way, did that not happen with you and your wife, Sherry?
Yes.
That almost sounds, it sounds like you're describing that situation.
Well, we were both born in Chicago. She lived on the south side, I lived on the north side, but we never met in Chicago because, especially in those days, the twain didn't meet. And so we never met in Chicago. Then we were both out here for, at least 20 or more years out in California before we met, accidentally at a party that I didn't want to go to, because I don't like parties. Those of you who are my friends who are watching this show, just remember that the next time you want to invite, I hate them. Nothing interesting is said at a party. It's all superficial conversation to me. But I went to this party because a friend of mine who I had great affection for asked me to take her. She was the wife of the great composer Sammy Cahn, the great lyricist. And I was heading out to Hollywood Park, to the racetrack. And she called me on my car phone and said, will you take me to this party tonight because Sammy doesn't want to go? And I said, Tita, I don't want to go either. And there was just something plaintive in her voice that got to me. So I turned around and I took her to this party. The door opened and there was Sherry, who I've now been married to. We're in our 22nd year.
Well, congratulations, Willie. Listen, going to end with these 2 more things I just want to cover because I know we're out of time. In spite of all the gifts God has given me, I still occasionally harbor anger and resentment. My salvation is to channel them into my work.
Yeah, that's true. I think that there are many people. I'm not the only person who has experienced anger, almost on a daily basis in my life. And sometimes people don't have an outlet for that. And I've been fortunate to be able to do that.
Billy, our time is up, and I'm going to end with these words. A life in film is like a long train ride. Sometimes it's fast, other times slow. The thing is, you don't know where it starts or when it will end. Billy, thank you for the long ride, and I hope it doesn't end soon.
Thanks very much, Barry. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
It's my pleasure, and thank you for joining us. Now, before William leaves, I'd like to leave you with these words from the Friedkin Connection. If you think the world is a dark and evil place where Satan rules, you can get that from the Exorcist. If, on the other hand, you believe, as I do, that a constant struggle takes place within all of us, and that sometimes goodness wins out, that's there as well. I'm Barry Kibrick. Between evil and goodness is the constant struggle within us all. Relish that struggle, for that is how goodness will win out. Thank you.
Oh, it was a great pleasure. You're a wonderful interviewer.
If you'd like to get in touch with us, want a DVD or transcript of our show, catch an episode online, or receive our weekly updates, go to www.klcs.org/BTL.